Welcome to the Spare Change podcast. Today I have on David Pere from Military to Millionaire. And David, feel free to introduce yourself, talk about some of the things that got you into the world of finances, investing, real estate.
Yeah, I made all the normal mistakes that service members do. I did all the buying of vehicles I didn't need and spending money on supplements and tattoos and dates and travel and whatever. And in 2015, someone handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read it and kind of realized, like, man, I've been in the military for 7 years. I got nothing to show for it financially other than like a small amount I contributed to my thrift savings plan. I should probably learn something about this. And so I started reading more books about just basic real estate or finance or whatever. Realized that, my apartment lease was kind of coming up. So I was like, well, let me see if I can buy a duplex and I can live in one unit, rent the others. Did that, got orders out of state about 7 months later. And once I got those orders and I had to rent out the other unit, it was cash flowing. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. It's paying me to own this thing. This is everything they said it was. And so from there, I kind of, went, dove head in, right? So I took a little while to buy my next property just because I didn't have capital. So I had to save up and learn and all this other stuff. And then I bought that one, and then it's just been kind of slowly growing. We've done 16 or 17 transactions so far this year. Some of those flips, some of those wholesales, some of those buy and holds. Really just depends. So it's been fun, so I'm not kind of been around, and that's the basics, right? And then I started the platform by I was just trying to document what I was learning. And as that grew, it kind of went from me being the guy who's learning things and just kind of passing it along to people asking questions. And then I'd go and learn that thing and write about that. And then people ask more. And then it slowly became like, oh, wow, Dave's this guy who's like an expert in military real estate. And I don't know, I guess it's kind of funny how that works. And I guess at this point I would agree with them, expert, whatever that means, but I haven't been through a recession yet, a bad one. So, I'll take that with a grain of salt. I kind of joke, but I don't, usually I kind of say, like, man, if you didn't make it through 2008 investing, then you're probably still too young to this to really know what you're doing, but we'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah. So one of the things that interested me in particular is the idea of good times or bad times. If you're not investing and planning for the future, more often than not, you're going to end up facing the worst of the situation. Because when people are in panic mode, fear, uncertainty, and doubt set in. And then the idea that I'm so crippled with fear that I don't want to invest because I'm afraid everything that I put in will be lost. Well, at that point, you're not putting anything in. You have no skin in the game, and you lose anyway. So I think it's really interesting, especially now with things like COVID and the war in Ukraine, all of these like vague topics that drill down ultimately to day-to-day financial development and personal finance. How do you manage your wealth? How do you protect yourself from things that are out of your control? And coming from the idea of a business mindset where you're managing more than just your own money, you're managing assets in a portfolio and you're interacting with people day-to-day basis. What are some of the things you do to control fear, not only within your company, but externally within the markets you're trying to approach?
Yeah, I don't know that it's so much controlling fear as it is just understanding risk well enough to acknowledge stuff's going to happen, right? Like, you buy 10 houses to flip, one of them's going to lose you a crap load of money. Maybe 2, maybe 3 of them. I don't know. But as long as the 6, 7, 8 that do make you money balance out, then who cares, right? Obviously it's easier to say than to do, especially if it's your first flip like mine that cost you 30 grand. But it it's just kind of understanding those things are going to happen. So like take your thrift savings plan, for example, right now, or 401k. I had almost $120,000 in it 4 months ago. I've got like 89, 88, something like that right now. Right. So there's a $30,000 dip to my net worth in the stock market. And there are people running around like, I need to go G fund. I need to move my money into this spot where it can't lose money, but it won't really gain money, and trying to time the market and move their money around. And it's like, dude, I haven't lost any money. Like my net worth went down, but I still own the exact same amount of shares. So when the market corrects, as it always does, and it goes back up, okay, I'll be fine, and I'll pass that mark, and it'll continue to grow, and it is what it is. And that's just kind of the way it works. So you have to understand, like, it comes, I guess, mainly from knowing like history and knowing like what has this happened before. Yes. Like one of the biggest like fallacies with investing is the idea that like this time it's different. It's never like, there might be a little bit of a like it's different. Sure, there's something that changed, but historically cycles repeat, and it's not that different. Like there's going to be a recession, and then it's going to come back, and then you just kind of, if you understand those things and you think long term, like who cares that it went down $20,000-$30,000 this year? It's still $20,000-$30,000 higher than it was 3 years ago, and it's going to continue. It'll come back, and then it'll grow, and then it'll whatever. And so I guess really it's just knowing what like the worst case scenario is, and investing in a way where that's not going to break you. And then if it happens, that sucks, but you move on because it didn't break you. And then you'll win more than you lose as long as you stay consistent and learn from your mistakes. So I don't know that it's controlling fear so much as just mitigating risk, understanding that it's going to happen, and then having the discipline to not freak out and change your strategy when something goes south.
Yeah, I think that's really key. Keeping a realistic mindset behind, well, I am not going to worry about right now when I know that we're in a cyclical phase of the economy. So I think the problem with a lot of like 18 up to 35, that's the age range that I'm really trying to talk to. A lot of folks end up, they see people who have been in the game a lot longer. They see success, not only in social media, but in news networks. And they see all these people that have done really well for themselves. And they don't understand that that's not always the way it started. And nobody's perfect. Everybody has those off days, and a lot of people get brainwashed into this idea that if they're not doing as well as this guy that they follow, and he keeps telling them, do this on TikTok and you'll become a millionaire. And like, great on paper, amazing on paper. But as soon as the practice comes in, and then they start to see like these inklings of failure, there's almost this give up mentality because of risk aversion and those behavioral economic standpoints where, oh my God, I'm losing all my money. I have to get out of this now. When in reality, that hard work that they started with, if they had just kept that mindset, they'd be on a much more successful path than allowing kind of these unexpected turns to control their future path.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right, like NBA players, the best basketball players in the world, do they miss baskets? Yeah, right. They miss shots. So every time you shoot, there is an inherent risk that you're going to miss that shot. And there's an inherent risk that you're going to get blocked. And there's an inherent risk that you're going to airball and the other team's going to catch it and take it down the court and score on you, and you lose the game. But if you don't take that shot, you're definitely going to lose the game. So, it's the same thing with investing. For whatever reason, people are so scared about the what if that they think, like, again, another logical fallacy, I guess. Like they think that, well, if I just don't, then I won't take that loss. You're right, but you also won't get any gains, and you'll have no retirement, and you're going to get to retirement and go, ah, shit, I hope my kids have a great job and can pay for me. And I don't know about you, but that's not the life I want to live. So
Right. And one of the things that very recent struggle in my life that I've learned to adapt with is having my 17-year-old brother living with us. We've kind of tried to pivot that mindset of coming from one of the poorest counties in all of Florida. Everybody around you just blows their money and they continue to live in the same place and there's no progression. So changing that mindset from, hey, we don't have anything, so we're going to stay in a place because we come from nothing and we're just not going to be successful. Changing that mindset to, hey, here are ways that you can plan and tweak, and eventually you'll take that compounding interest, or you'll take that positive mindset and turn it into something where you don't have to worry so much about the day-to-day fluctuations of the market or the cost of goods day to day. Like, just because God forbid gas prices go to double digits, that might not be as much of a stressor in your life if you plan ahead and you build. It's going to suck either way, but if you've already developed a plan and you just kind of make those adjustments that you need to in spending, and I've talked about appetite of spending where, oh, I see this and I want it now, and instead of saving, I'm just going to go get it. Well, in reality, it's a lot better if I know I don't have everything I need, so I'm going to get the things I need first and apply the rest to like saving for those things that like trigger my dopamine.
Yeah.
Another one of the things that I've been super influenced by, and you were there as well, was Mill Money Con, and talking that intersection of not only the military, but people who are influencers and people who are financial professionals, and bringing everybody into one room where we can have this discussion, where instead of the topics of finance, business, they're not looped in with the same conversations that you can't have in a bar anymore. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So like, you can't talk about sex, God, politics, money, and, debt. But now if we open the conversation, I think it's a lot more efficient. If you're struggling and you don't know a way forward, you can at least have that discussion with someone. And that's one of the biggest goals I have. And I think one of the biggest things that you offer is those business insights. One of the things you had talked about, especially on like Instagram stories, you'd be driving and you're talking about like, just because you've set up a business and you've done all these great things doesn't mean there won't be impacts in the future. And you talked about lawsuits and legal structure and how to shift to adjust to those impacts. And they're things that you've dealt with personally. So people who haven't, like, not the slightest clue, i.e. me, someone who wants to start a business really bad, but doesn't want to get caught up in really negative situations, I can learn a lot from you and we can have those discussions. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was business structure and how to, obviously there's going to be one, there's always one case where things don't go right and someone's pissed off enough to pursue that avenue. So I would love to pick your brain on business structure and best practices with businesses, things that people can do today. That way they're at least more prepared for the issues that might arise.
Yeah. So I guess first I think it's obligatory that I say I'm not an attorney. So talk to an attorney. This isn't legal advice, but I am a guy who owns or is a partner on, well, I think I just signed a contract to sell one. So I think 7 LLCs now. And who's also been in, well, not one lawsuit, one settled out of court, and a third where I had to, all of which, ironically, I'm the person suing. And not because I'm just that guy. Like, it's like the last thing I want to do. What you realize in business is that there are a lot of schmucks out there who just don't do the right thing. And if people were just decent people or just did the right thing, right? So one of those scenarios, house was under contract. We were buying it on Friday. On Wednesday, the seller texted and said, I don't think I want to sell anymore. All right, dude. We have a signed contract. We did an inspection. We did appraisals. We did find it. Like, I'm either like, if it had been like their actual house, right, it'd be one thing. But this is an investment property. The guy doesn't live in it. Makes no sense. I'm like, dude, we spent like $5,000 doing all the things to get ready for this bad boy. We have a contract. You're selling. Sorry. Like, the time for seller's remorse is gone. Come to find out, he had gotten a higher offer on the property, but that doesn't matter because we had signed what's called a notice of intent, which basically means, hey, we're under contract on this. So it clouds the title. So if he was to break the contract and try to sell someone else, they would have to call me and get my signature to make that sale. So then I would be able to be like, oh yeah, $5,000. Yeah, you give me that, and sure, I'll release the title. Anyway, so basically we showed him that, and he was like, oh, okay, fine. And he sold the house, right? Because he was trying to just go around our backs and get a better deal. The other one, ironically, a commercial lender who knows the game and knows what he's supposed to do, the day of closing says he couldn't get financing. Well, that wasn't a contingency, so it doesn't matter. And, he just tried to put his head in the sand and disappear because ironically, someone who does underwriting for loans for a living, underwrote the property wrong. Not my problem. He signed it. It was a no contingency offer. So, but ultimately we settled that one out of court because I basically told him, hey, the contract says you owe me this much money. If you fail to perform, you give me half of that and you'll never hear from me again. And he did. The third one, much bigger ordeal, 3 years, $30,000 in legal fees, and still haven't got an answer. Probably in the next 2 weeks, finally going to wrap up. So I can't necessarily articulate all the details on that, but just suffice it to say, me and another gentleman signed an agreement for me to buy a building, and he didn't uphold any of the pieces of the contract that he was supposed to, which in turn meant that the building wasn't functioning or rentable in the way that it was supposed to be. So I was losing a ton of money and said, yo, either you do these things or you give me my money back. And he didn't do the things and didn't give me my money back. So we're trying to get our money back. Feel pretty confident about that one. But all that being said, I've done a little homework on this now because I've been in the situation. There's a couple different ways to do it. There's different levels, right? So do you need an LLC for your first property? Probably not. And if it's a primary residence, you won't even be able to put it in an LLC. So no bank's going to loan to that because they're loaning to you. But your first rental, maybe not, doesn't really matter. When it matters is when you start to accrue multiple assets. You don't want them under your personal name, because if you have a primary residence that's paid off and 3 rentals, if a tenant trips in one of the rentals and they sue you, you're much more attractive for a lawsuit because the property that's free and clear has enough equity to pay whatever the verdict is. If you only have the rentals in there in that LLC, then that's all they can sue for. And if they don't have a ton of equity, then they're not going to waste their time trying to sue you because they know they're not going to get anything out of it. So it's this weird game. So ultimately what I do is I build an LLC, buy whatever amount of real estate in that LLC that I'm comfortable with. And then I create another LLC, or if I'm doing a partnership, that's another LLC. And so I have, 5 or 6 LLCs for different ventures. Some are 33% ownership, some are 50, some are 100. And then above that, I have a holding company. So an extra LLC, and that LLC is Wyoming LLC. So it's got total anonymity. So they don't know who I am. So if they look up this one LLC, they will go online and see that it's owned by this other LLC, and they won't be able to see who owns that one. So they won't be able to come back to me and say, hey, we know you own all this stuff. So it's just a way to basically keep it all hidden, right? It's like if you imagine like hide and seek, and you're able to just hide all your properties from attorneys and say, oh yeah, this one terrible thing happened. Thank goodness you don't know that I own all this other stuff, even if you do know that I own all this other stuff, you can't prove it because the LLCs aren't tied in together. And then you can go, that structure can get even more broad, like above the holding company, you could have the holding company owned by revocable or irrevocable trust. and then that trust owns the holding company, which owns the, I mean, you can get pretty crazy in the weeds. I don't think that matters for most people, but as you get more assets, it definitely becomes more important because you're going to be a bigger target for lawsuits. The more tenants you have, the more likely someone is to sue you because tenants like to slip and fall and think it's your fault. It's just nature of the beast, right? So it's just one of those things where it's like a safety guy, right? If you're in the military, there's always that safety dude around and everybody hates his guts because he's running around going, oh, you shouldn't have that many outlets or things plugged into one outlet. And you're like, dude, shut up until your building burns down. And then you're like, crap, we should have listened to that dude. So it's the same thing with legal, right? It's boring and nobody likes it. You're spending money on something you hope you never have to use. But if you don't do it and something happens, you're going to be kicking yourself. So it's definitely worth covering your butt.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of the things associated with structuring your company is the legal structure of it, whether it's an LLC, an S corp. You don't want to just, one of the things that I picked up from being around a few litigation attorneys that spoke at Rally Point when we were up in Cary, North Carolina, is the idea that you can get legal advice from anywhere is becoming really propagated by all of these legal technology firms and apps. And sure, there's some knowledge there and there's a basis for some of that information to be useful. But then you get to the granularity points where these words mean something, but they don't mean the thing that you're going to need in court.
Yep.
So things like, without putting my neck on the line, a certain legal app that provides people with baseline documents and gets them enough to have the legal structure of XYZ. Here's an LLC legal structure for this type of company. If you get into the right situation, or for yourself, the wrong situation, a lot of times people can take advantage of loopholes in your legal structure that aren't covered by that $50, maybe $100 fee that you found online. And then another topic kind of related, not exactly in the legal realm, but in the financing the startup process, as far as incorporating your business. There's different costs associated with LLCs and S corps, trusts, and I think that's super important for people to research, as well as if you don't have the capital to start a business, the SBA, they can assist with that process with 7A loans, and there's a few other like microloan strategy, and I think a 504 business loan. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but
it's not my wheelhouse, but those are,
there's a lot that goes into it, is kind of the idea that I'm trying to cover. So in structuring your company this way, you've kind of built yourself a wall of protection that not every business owner is going to be aware that they might need. So always, I think the most important thing when you start a business is to plan ahead, know your needs prior to. So if you're going to be serving alcohol, or you're going to be bringing in other people's equipment and their tools and storing them and doing maintenance on them, you're going to need to be protected from any damages associated, or XYZ. All of the things that go into your business are eventually going to wash out into the legal structure. And I think that's incredibly important for people looking to start a business, or people who are very new to the business landscape.
I agree. Yeah. And definitely to your point, for just a random example, in the state of Missouri, it's $50 to file for an LLC. And then for rentals, it's like, I think it's $20 a year plus $1 for every unit that you have, or something like that. Actually, that might be the business license, but it's cheap, right? It's less than $100 a year for you to have an LLC. The state of California, it's like $850. So if I was to have like 7 LLCs in California, that's, $4,000, whatever. No, it's more than that. It's a significant chunk of change, right? So you need to know every state's different. Everything is different. And yeah, for most people in the real estate space, just a normal solo or solo or partner LLC is totally fine. Where it starts to make sense for like the S corp side in real estate is usually your wholesalers and house flippers, where it's active short-term gains, income, and you still want to pay yourself a salary, so you don't want to be hitting twice. But for most real estate investors, the normal LLC setup's fine.
Yeah. So with S corps and LLCs, one of the things you talked about is like owner's draw and paying yourself, and the tax structure behind those can vary. So I know, I can't guarantee anything for North Carolina because I haven't done the research, but if you know of any like protections or veterans benefits to veteran owned small businesses, I know that's something you can speak to, having come from the military background and entering the real estate landscape. So some of the things that are associated with veterans benefits, i.e. being preferred for an SBA loan and increased capital, and just developing your business can become less friction and more incentivized as someone who comes from a minority background, women owned, veteran owned. There are incentives out there for people who are interested in starting a business. And additionally, if you come from a disadvantaged position into business ownership, there are some possibilities out there that you might not be aware of. And if you know of any, feel free to talk about them. I'm just kind of bringing it up as a highlighted point.
Yeah, I wish that I had a lot more info on that. We were going to use an SBA loan to close on a hotel, and it just, I forget what the reason was, but we ended up going with a normal commercial loan with our lender halfway through the process. SBA is definitely a little bit lengthier than your normal loan product, but definitely valuable. But as far as the specific to veteran business side, most of what I've done has been in real estate. And so I haven't really been able to tap into the like business loan side of things on that world. So not entirely sure what the answer would be there.
Yeah. I mean, again, always learning. So I'm sure there's someone out there who has the knowledge, and I'm willing to tackle those questions because I'm interested as well.
Yeah.
Trying to think, the training program that you're developing, some of the things that you're teaching people, we can go as deep as you want on that. Really, I just would like to hear an overview of some of the things you've already done and the path you're trying to take with your training program.
Yeah, most of what we do is super affordable. I am about to launch my first like high ticket, like somewhat expensive course, but it's not targeted towards service members, so I'm okay with that. It's targeted towards like real estate agents who are looking for a way to increase their revenue without having to increase their workload much. I have a somewhat unique approach to things where I made 6 figures last year as a real estate agent, and I never sold a house or worked with a client directly. So I do a lot of referrals, and that's kind of a niche in the real estate game that people don't really know or take advantage of. And it can be very lucrative with very little work. So building out something with that, but most of what we do is super affordable. Like my courses, everyone I know in the business space tells me I'm super underpriced, and I don't care because I'm just trying to get the info out to service members and vets. So the main thing we've got is the book, the No BS Guide to Military Life, this guy, which is, everything I wish I'd known when I first joined the military. So it's like chronological. It talks about, different ways to get promoted and different jobs that you should look into, and how to use your TSP, and how to do your VA disability claim, and how to use the VA loan, and all these different things. It's kind of chronological. So it's best for somebody joining the military, but anyone in the military or veterans is going to gain a ton from it regardless. And then we've got like a real estate basics course, and building out a wholesaling base, just a bunch of, most of my courses are like super entry level. Like, hey, if you want to learn a little bit about this and see if it's right for you, then take this cheap course, a couple hours, you learn a bunch of stuff, and then you go, wow, this is exactly what I want. And great, here's a really awesome dude that I know and trust who can help you take that to the next level. I'm not trying to do the super expensive, detailed coaching. Probably the most valuable thing that we offer is our mastermind group. So we have a group that's just for service members and vets who are serious about real estate. We've got 170, 175 members in it right now. And it's, it's affordable, but it is a monthly fee, just because I was in a bunch of free masterminds and they always fell apart. Nobody without skin in the game, people don't put effort into it. It's weird. Like, if I give you free access to this group of people who are doing millions of dollars a year in real estate, you might use it. If I give you the exact same thing and say, that's going to be $50 a month or $100 a month, or, whatever the amount is, you will then say, oh my gosh, I spent $100 on this. I better put work into it to make sure I get my money's worth. And so it's this weird conundrum where it's like, if I give it away, nobody gets any value out of it. And I saw that because I was in 3 free masterminds and none of them made it past 2 months. We've now been around for 2.5 years. I've been in masterminds that are free that didn't work. I've been in masterminds that were $100 that worked. I've been in mastermind. I'm in a mastermind right now that's $1,000 a month. And so I'm all about paying to play, right? If you want to get around somebody who is worth significantly more than you or just farther along in life, then it's worth paying or donating your time or something to ensure that you are able to access that person, right? Because someone who's like one of the founders of GoBundance, which is the $1,000 a month mastermind, is David Osborne. The man's worth over $200 million. You think if I pick up the phone and call him and say, hey, can I take you out to coffee and pick your brain? He's going to give me, like, he doesn't have an hour of his time to give. If he did that, he'd never make any money because he'd be coaching everybody who asked for free. But if you pay the $1,000 and show up at his event, he will talk to you and you'll get a ton of information out of him and everyone around him. He'll introduce you to people. I mean, it's game changer. So anyway, so we've got that community, which is super affordable, and it's full of guys who are doing, we've got dudes in there who are worth anywhere from I've never bought a real estate deal to I make multiple millions of dollars a year. So it's pretty cool. So I don't know. I don't know if that answered. I kind of rambled on about a bunch of random crap that we offer, but long story short, all that stuff's great. Tons of just totally free content on TikTok, YouTube, podcasts, whatever. And that's where you should go first. Don't buy any of my crap until you actually watch some of the free stuff and think it's worthwhile.
Yeah. And I think it's a great effort, and the idea that you come from a place of experience. And this is one of the things that I've talked to a lot of folks. I was a scholarship opportunity to go to Mill MoneyCon, and now I've got an additional scholarship for FinCon. So I think there's
Dude,
a lot
that's
of
sick.
value. Yeah.
FinCon's awesome.
Out of the idea that I was a content creator and I have 8 uploads on YouTube with no real significant audience, but they still let me in their little freebies, right?
Yeah.
So I actually have no negative words to say about networking and the power of it, because if I wasn't there, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met Brandon Childers from Freelance Corporal.
Yeah.
And through him, I found one of the other guys that I'm about to upload a video with. So the power of knowing people and being able to have conversations with them, whether or not the initial conversation is just, hey, I'd like to just, like you said, grab coffee and pick your brain, versus, all right, I see you offer this course. It's of information that pertains to or that I'm interested in, and I'm willing to pay you for your time so that I can gain that knowledge. No matter what point you start at, I think the power of being able to have conversations that you wouldn't in your typical groups, and moving yourself into a group of people who have knowledge, know-how, experience, and whether it's good or bad experience, they still can kind of provide insight. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the people I've met, I went from maybe 1 or 2 connections on LinkedIn to about 100. And that's good for me, because I'm a guy who's literally, tomorrow is my 2 months out of the military. Um,
Oh yeah.
so
You're
I
right.
think there's a huge effort in being able to market yourself, whether you're at a standpoint of owning 7 LLCs or you're at a standpoint of I'm a PFC and I have a Camaro that I bought with 24% interest. If you can put yourself in a room with people who have experienced the things you've experienced or know something that you want to, it's super valuable. And I appreciate your time for being able to bring some of that knowledge to the table. And not only that, but kind of hold a discussion that's so open and raw and genuine. If you would like to take some time for parting words and things that you'd like to push as either a call to action or things that you want people to consider as far as investments, real estate, things that you think people should know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton there, right? But I think it basically boils down to just a few things. Would you rather start planning for retirement now, which is boring, and pass away before you make it there, or not start planning for retirement now because you're afraid you're going to pass away and not need the money, and then getting to retirement and going, oh crap, I got like the amount of people I run into are veterans that are 50, 60, 70 years old that are still working some dead end W-2 job that they hate because they didn't plan for retirement. So, service members, a lot of people, I mean, people in general seem to be short-sighted on retirement because they're like, no, I might not make it. Okay, well, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So I would say that. I would say whatever you want to learn and or do in anything in life, but especially in investing, find somebody who's already done that successfully and find a way to get around them. Whether you're just volunteering your time or you're paying to be in their group or you're networking your way and getting a really warm introduction so they actually talk to you or whatever it is, right? Find that person who's already done what you want to do and they are where you want to go and find a way to get in their circle. Because if you spend time around those people, you'll become successful, right? You're not going to become a world-class power lifter by hanging around the donut shop, but you might become a world-class power lifter if you go to a world-class powerlifting gym. It is what it is. It's amazing what happens when you get around the right people, and they'll pull you up, right? You're never going to be criticized for thinking too big by people who are more successful than you. It's always the people who are doing worse that want to pull you back down, like crabs in a bucket.
I really love that analogy. I think it's super empowering to the people who feel like they're stuck around crowds that don't want to push their way out. And that's kind of some of the people that I've seen and been around. That's kind of the mentality. And I think the conversations that we're having here can help people change that. I'd love to take any questions or hear any updates in the future about some of the things we discussed today.
Yeah.
And I think it's really great that you took time out of your day to talk to me, because I'm talking out of my garage and trying to figure things out for myself.
Hey man, the first video I put on YouTube was filmed in a closet. So
yeah,
it
start
happens
somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. Any things that you've got planned in the next month or so? Things that I know you've got your book out and you're running the training course.
Yeah.
Any more collaborations in the future? I know you did Chump Change podcast what was that, a couple weeks back?
Yeah.
So if you've got any near-term goals.
Yeah, I mean, just more podcasts, I guess. So more podcasts. I've got my first local event for people with my mastermind. Looking to start working on book 2 and 3, looking to build out a couple other courses. Ultimate goal for the summer is to take at least one day off during the week and spend time with family. So that's I've been talking about this a lot on my channel, and I'm by no means rich enough that I can just do whatever I want all the time, right? But I'm comfortable. And so you get to a point where you realize, like, okay, I'm not scrounging anymore. I'm not struggling. I'm comfortable. then you start to realize there's more important things than the money. And that's a much harder problem to solve a lot of times, is finding the meaning and the time and all the things. So
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree, coming from a standpoint of knowing that there's comfort in having enough to worry about those other things. And I know people who are dealing with a lot and they don't really know when that time's going to come for them to be able to, take time for themselves. And a lot of people get in that hamster wheel mentality where they just push and push and push, and eventually they give out.
Yeah.
No, but I really do appreciate the time that you've set aside to talk to me. Hopefully we can propagate both of our voices out there for people to hear. And I hope you have a good one.
You too, brother.
All right.